Whatever you think of Trump, his economic plan makes complete sense.
His name is Mohammed Adani. I'm going to take apart all of his key points, but I think he's actually very smart. He just wants to get into America. And I think you're nailing it, man. I'm rooting for you. His first point is that Doge is cutting Social Security fraud because they are finding out that there are people who are 150 years old who are still receiving Social Security. That has been debunked. Most of the time, when people die, they have a funeral, and it's the funeral home that contacts the Social Security Administration. This is a form for the Social Security Administration Statement of Death by the funeral director. Now, what if somebody did not have a funeral? So now it's the coroner's job to contact the Social Security Administration. So that loophole's done. Then there's the fact that Social Security is 88 years old, and it's completely different back then to what it is today. The first Social Security payment was lump sum. It was 17 cents in 1937. And even then, funeral homes and coroners had to report deaths to SSA. But what if somebody was never pronounced dead? Wouldn't they receive Social Security payments forever? In 1989, age safeguards were introduced. After you hit 115, the SSA does an age validity check and makes sure that you're actually alive. Remember, you have to be that age or older and have no death record. So no, there is nobody over the age of 120 or 150 still receiving a penny of Social Security. Now, he mentions that tariffs will bring in $500 billion of revenue. Now, Mohammed incorrectly states that we get $50 billion a year in tariff revenue. No, it's about 97 to 100 billion. Tariff revenue will increase to 100 billion in tax revenues, not 500 billion. Mohammed, I'm not sure if you actually know how tariffs work because it is the importer that pays the tariff, not the exporting country. So all the tariffs mean is that Americans will be paying an extra 100 billion or more in taxes to consume the goods that they could barely afford this year. And Mohammed says that other countries can't retaliate against America because we are the largest importer, we are everybody's largest customer. China successfully retaliated, and they hurt the American farm industry because once we started tariffing them in 2018, they stopped buying a lot of our agricultural products and they shifted the demand to feed 1.4 billion people to Brazil. So Brazil heavily filled the agricultural needs of China instead of America. And it was the United States taxpayer who had to pay the American farmers in subsidies so they didn't lose everything. So China managed to successfully divert their supply chain in agriculture from the United States. Now Canada, Mexico, and the European Union are starting to do the same. Mohammed then mentions how our current tariffs are not fair, and he uses the European car example. Europe applies a 10% tariff to American imported cars, while America only applies a 2.5% tariff to Europeans. Now, Mohammed, I don't know if you're holding this back or you really don't know how to think one or two steps ahead when you're researching. The 5 most popular European car brands in the United States are BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Volkswagen, and Saab. But Audi is owned by Volkswagen, so let's just say 4. And each of these 4 brands have a large manufacturing presence in the United States, meaning that we are getting the benefit of them producing their foreign cars in America. They don't pay any tariffs because they're building the car here. Let's just look at BMW. They are the largest automotive exporter by value in the United States. And 50% of all the BMWs sold in the United States are manufactured in the United States. And you will see similar stats with the other 3 European manufacturers. The US automobile industry has a much smaller manufacturing presence in Europe. So that's why Europe does that 10% tariff and the US does a negligible one. And Mohammed, you're mentioning how these tariffs will bring manufacturing and businesses back inside the United States. Whenever the United States does not use laser-focused tariffs and start going after sectors or multi-sectors, it has directly harmed the economy in the short and mid-term. Maybe in the long term, things can go well, but during that time, there can be a lot of economic suffering, especially if the country is already quite vulnerable. Mohammed also mentions the common deregulation will increase revenue. You have to be more specific than that because when we began to deregulate the banking sector heavily, we saw one of the worst economic crashes that we have had in the past 95 years. The gold card, of course, gets mentioned, that $5 million will give you a lifetime of US citizenship. He then says there's at least 1 to 2 million individuals globally, and if just 100,000 people buy this card, that's 1 trillion in incremental revenue. 5 million times 100,000 is 500 billion. Please correct your math. Then he goes to reducing taxes. Anyone making more than $150,000 is not going to pay any taxes. That's what he says right here. Make them pay 0 taxes. It's for people who make no less than $150,000 a year. 25% of all gross income taxes are paid by people who make less than $150,000. So we would be losing 75% of all of our tax revenue if people who made $150,000 or more didn't pay taxes. You then go to corporate taxes and say that they will go down from 21% to 15%, and that is going to make everybody so much money. No, you're absolutely wrong. I don't think you thought at all about this. We are looking at a chart of America's federal deficit from 1991 to today. Under the Clinton administration, we actually went to a surplus, but under Bush, we went to a deficit and then more into a deficit, especially during the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. Under Obama, from 2009 to 2015-16, the deficit did shrink up to only $400 billion, and then it began to drop. Let's zoom in on Obama's last years. The deficit did begin to increase 2015 to 2016 to 2017 to 2018. From 2018 to 2019, that was the implementation of the Trump tax cuts. It got a little steeper, and then COVID happened, and we had the worst deficit that we've ever had. $3.2 trillion. Even when we recovered, we were still in a much worse deficit than we were under pretty much any other president. We are still at a deficit as a result of these Trump tax cuts. And on both sides of the political aisle, among actual economists, there is consensus that those tax cuts contributed to the deficit. They may not have been the only cause, but they were a big one. So cutting corporate taxes further to 15% is just going to lead to more of a deficit. This will lead to more debt, meaning more taxes that we have to pay just to pay the interest for that debt. And you may not want that to be true, but I have actual economists who watch me on this app. And if I'm wrong, I have those same economists coming after me. And if I was wrong, I'd want them to. Now, Mohammed, at the end of your post, I like what you said, that if these savings and this budget efficiency were actually able to take place, the money could go where it should, to helping the people who couldn't work, to protecting the weak, to taking care of the elderly who can't care for themselves. I admire that. I admire you for saying that. Now, you heard what I said in the beginning of my post. If you're trying to get into this country and you know actually better, good for you. Hope you come over. And you need to cross-reference every number you mentioned. I am the Geo Hussar. If you guys want me to debunk more videos, send them my way. Thanks for watching.